All right, so just to touch upon the very last topic, and that is, it was really posed by the question of whether one should pray even when one does not have intention. When your mind is floating everywhere, can you still pray? Does it even help to pray? Does God expect you to pray? And the answer was yes, by all means pray, whether you have intention or you don't have intention. Now, your prayer is needed, number one, for the consistency of the act, because consistency in general in life is what establishes a fact. The more you pray, the more you become yourself a prayer, right? And whether with intention or without. And number two, also, the more you pray, the more you can open up your heart to eventually become aligned with your prayer, right? Because as we've said many times now, we've quoted the great sage Rabbeinu Bechaye of the 11th, 12th century, who says that after the deeds, the hearts follow. We are what we do. We've said this many times. And the more you do something, the more your heart and the rest of your body, the more your mind becomes aligned with that thing that you do. So even if you are praying robotically, eventually the prayer, the action of prayer will cause your heart to stir, to awaken, and eventually that heart will align with the prayer. So a prayer without intention is nonetheless a good action. It's an encouraged action and something that will also create a spark of holiness in you that will align your mind and your heart with prayer at some point. Now, speaking of that alignment, we also spoke about how the most righteous, like Rabbi Chia in the Talmud, were so aligned that they knew exactly, not just when their prayer was being good prayer, valuable prayer, because it was a prayer with the heart and with the mind, but also they knew whether it was an effective prayer, whether their prayer actually caused the thing that they were asking for to happen, right? So Rabbi Chia, for example, when he reached, or it was Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa first, when he reached the portion of the prayer in which we asked for rain, all of a sudden it began to rain. And when he reached the prayer, the part of the prayer that asks for wind to be blown, wind started to fill the earth. Now, that was the effectiveness of his prayer. And one of the ways he would know whether this would indeed happen, whether this was effective, was whether he was stuttering or not throughout the prayer. If his prayer was flowing naturally without any stutter, that meant that indeed this prayer was going to be effective. That meant that the person, for example, that he was praying for to become healthy, to recover, would indeed recover. If he was stuttering, that's when he knew that alignment was obstructed, therefore was not complete, and therefore his prayer may not be as effective as those prayers that he recited when the stutter did not exist. But that's how fine-tuned, so to speak, right, the righteous are. They are so one with God that when they speak, it's God speaking. Unless there's a stutter, which may be a reflection, again, some type of instruction, that there is God flowing through them, but for some reason, maybe reasons that are beyond our mind, the flow is not as perfect as it is, as seamless as it is, and therefore it's not as effective eventually as it is also. But that was the big idea. We can continue here at the bottom of page 135. Many people have often had the same experience, that experience of complete oneness with God, complete alignment, as we called it. Does anyone want to read?
Rabbi, before
yes, please. Sure.
I just wonder if it would be useful just to share with some of the newer people why we read out loud,
right,
and what the intention is in reading Rabbi Steinsaltz's words out loud,
right,
and why it's really a privilege and an honor to be able to read out loud.
Right. No, good point. So it all began because a few years ago, going back now, to 2016, I think, Rabbi Steinsaltz had a stroke. The author of a book, obviously. And unfortunately, his stroke also affected his ability to speak. He mumbled, he said a few words, but his speech was never the same after the stroke. So in hopes to help him recover his speech, we spoke his words, so that spiritually it could also flood his mouth because they were directed towards him. They are directed towards him. His mouth will be filled with his words again, which will eventually, hopefully, that's what we hope, help him to regain his power of speech. That's number one. Now that he is no longer physically in this world, not that he's deceased, the Talmud says that when a person, it's a very powerful line of the Talmud, that when a person studies and recites and says the words of the Torah words of a sage, of a scholar, then as we are saying those words, the lips of that person are moving in his grave. Siftotav medovevot bakever, in the words of the Talmud. And those lips that are moving in his grave because they are coming from the righteous create a tremendous change, positive change in our world. And it could even bring about redemption and salvation for our world. So each time we are saying, even now, when we just said the words, many people have often, we haven't even finished the sentence yet, but those 4 words were said by Rabbi Steinsaltz in his grave. That's what Talmud says. And the movement of his lips certainly create this ripple effect in this world that can really bring about many blessings. So that's the deeper reason now for which we are saying those words. Yes, no, thank you. Okay, Gila, please go ahead. Make Rabbi Steinsaltz's lips move.
I'll do like that. Many people have often had the same experience when they read or hear something and feel that it is just what they would have wanted to say. So a person praying on this level feels that the words of the prayer book mirror exactly his own thoughts and desires. He himself flows together with the prayer service, ascending and descending from psalm to psalm, from blessing to blessing, from one level of reality to another, moving with the services like a traveler, journeying through various vistas. He is on Mount Moriah, present at Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac. He is then in the temple offering sacrifices. He rises and praises God together with the heavens. He stands at the Red Sea as he recites. Then sang Moses. He joins the angels in proclaiming God's holiness, rising with the Ophanim in a thunderous chorus, phasing the seraphim. He enters into a state of oneness when he recites the Shema. He surrenders everything to God when he states, "And you shall love." And he stands before God with complete self-effacement in the Shema.
All right, so that is when you know that you're completely one with God. Now, but the question is that the words are understood. The question is, how do you reach that level where you can actually experience yourself on Mount Sinai when you're reading about it, or at the splitting of the Red Sea when you are saying that Az Yashir Moshe, then sang Moses, or all the other examples that he brought? How can you truly experience that? How can you truly experience oneness with God so that when you pray to God, you are one with him and the events that he performed for us here on earth, no matter when in history? And the answer, I believe, first starts with how big your eye is. You know, one of the great Psalms, one of the great verses in the book of Psalms comes from the chapter 121. In other words, it's a chapter we say here every Shabbat, and we dedicate it to the welfare and well-being of our brothers and sisters across the world. But the second verse of that specific chapter is it's the first verse, sorry. Which means I will lift my eyes up to the mountains. From where will my help come? That's the way it's usually translated. The word from where is me'ayin. Me'ayin can be translated indeed, from where will my help come? And then the verse ends with a question mark, from where will my help come? Or the verse can end with a period. But me'ayin then does not mean from where. Me'ayin means nothingness. From nothingness, my help will come. It's not a question mark. Not from where will my help come. Ayin. Ayin is nothing. From nothingness, my help will come. Period. What does this mean? It means that when I can let go of my ego, when I can let go of what I need, what I want, and rather ask again what I'm needed for, what is my purpose in life? Not to fulfill myself, but to be a channel of God in this world. It's not about me. It's about nullifying my me. for the greater cause, for God himself. When I can reach that level of me'ayin, I'm nothing, then my help will come. And this is what really Rabbi Steinsaltz is alluding to here. How do you experience indeed all these experiences? By saying, okay, prayer is not about me. Or as they put it differently, it's not telling God how big your problems are. It's telling your problems how big God is. That's a whole different perspective. And when you are saying, God, I'm one with you. I don't know. I may have some problems. I may have some challenges, but I wasn't sent here. I didn't decide to live. You decided for me to live. And you decided for me to live because you have a mission for me. So how can I take your grandeur, become one with it, and then bring it to my problems, bring it to this world? That's really how you achieve this idea. Now, we'll even say that that's really the definition, the Kabbalistic definition. This is a class of Kabbalah of wisdom. Another Hebrew word that is very interesting is the word for wisdom. The word for wisdom in Hebrew is chokhmah. Rabbi Steinsaltz speaks about this in this book too. Chokhmah in Hebrew is really a combination of two Hebrew words, koach ma, which means strength, what? The literal translation, which means that true wisdom is not when my own brain can reach my own conclusions, is when I say, you know what? There's a greater wisdom that I have to open myself up. I have to, in a way, lose my brain to find my brain. Let me see what this flow is all about. And let me see if I can be the channel of that flow. I have to lose, koach ma, I have to lose my strength. I have to say, okay, now I'm a vessel. I'm an empty vessel. And if I'm an empty vessel, that's when really pure wisdom, godly wisdom can come and fill my own vessel. My vessel is full of me, can never receive anything because it's all about me. Well, it's like the Talmud says, that someone who's arrogant, that me and him cannot live in the same place. You know why? Because you take the whole place. You occupy the whole place. There's no room for God. The more you minimize the ego, the more you gain me'ayin. You lose yourself, the more you have room for God. The more God can then fill your life. It's easy to say and hard to do. I recognize that it's not easy to achieve that level, but I think it's really the aleph bet, to use a Hebrew expression. It's the foundation of it all. Maimonides begins his 14 volumes of his magnum opus, his 14 volumes of Jewish law called the Mishneh Torah, with Yesodei Yesodot ve'amud ha'chochmot, leida sheyeshem matzui. That the foundation of all foundations. By the way, it's interesting because Maimonides was very pragmatic, at least in his teachings. They're very clear, they're very practical, but he was also a big Kabbalist. And there's all sorts of hints of Kabbalah in his work, including in that opening line of his magnum opus, Yesoda Yesodot v'amud ha'chochmot. If you take the initials of those 4 words, which means the foundation of foundations and the pillar of all wisdom, then you'll see the letters Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, which spells out the letter of the name of God. And so that was the Kabbalistic touch of Maimonides to his opening. But what is the foundation of foundations and the pillar of all wisdom? Leidash Yeshem Matsui, to know that there is one God, and that God pervades it all, permeates everything. Once a person knows that, then he can begin to live. Then you can have, all these laws that pertain to life itself. And what King Solomon says too, Reshit Chochmah Yirat Hashem, that the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. Not the fear of God like you're trembling, but the recognition, the awesomeness that one should have towards God. Now, why? Because the wisdom that you have, He created. And not just the wisdom, everything that you have, He created. Not recognizing the source of wisdom is in of itself an idiocy, I would say. It's the opposite of wisdom. So if you want to embrace wisdom, then embrace the source of wisdom too. If I want to embrace this bottle, I have to recognize also that this bottle belongs somewhere. I had to go and actually buy it. I can't just go and shoplift. So I have to recognize this belongs to someone. It eventually belonged maybe to, I don't know which company, Arrowhead. But that's how I can acquire something I can't just shoplift. We can't shoplift wisdom either. We have to recognize who the owner of the wisdom is. And by recognizing, then you can connect and you can own it. Otherwise, you can't really own it. That's really the idea. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. But I do want to open this up to anyone who has any questions. We can develop this idea because it's a very profound one. Yes.
Very interesting how you're able to transformation of the Hebrew word. Really stuck on that may-ayin.
Yeah.
And I could get there if it was spelled with an aleph, but it's in
It is. No, it is. It is aleph.
may-ayin.
Yeah. But yeah, it is aleph.
Good.
Yeah, then you're good. That's it.
I think it was from the eye, what's going on with the eye.
Yeah.
His eye
It is spelled with an aleph.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although, isn't it that?
Yeah. Koch, if you
Yeah,
you have to switch. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Good. No, good point.
Very
You're
good.
right. You're right. Very
Yeah, I
good
was
point.
thinking about the
You
eyes,
do. They
so-
play around with the letters like that sometimes. You're right. Yeah. Yeah. But me'ayin means nothingness. That's right. From nothingness will come a help. And therefore it's not a question mark. Therefore it's a period. Interesting. Yes, Mark.
It seems like the Kabbalah, and you referenced it a number of times just now, is somewhat so ingrained in our thought process. It's hard for me to distinguish what is the Kabbalistic influence versus non-Kabbalist influence. It's almost built in to the way we're thinking now.
Right.
I mean, I reread the chapter on prayer, and so much of it is basically ingrained in
Kabbalah.
day-to-day prayer.
Right. Right. I agree. I mean, Kabbalah, look, as opposed to what many people think, Kabbalah is not a separate part of the Jewish library. It's not. It's one and part and parcel of the Jewish library, of every book in the Jewish library. In fact, not just the Jewish library, of Jewish life. Many things that we do, we would be surprised, but they're very Kabbalistic. For example, when we say the Shema, we cover our eyes. Why do we do that? It's a Kabbalistic reason. There's so many things that we do that are ingrained in prayer, but ingrained in so many other parts of life that are purely Kabbalistic, and we're not even aware of it, because the internal and the external come as one. You can't separate the body from the soul. You die if you do that. And so it is with Judaism. You can't separate the external teachings, the bodily teachings, with the soulful teachings, which is Kabbalah. So you're right. They come together. Yeah. Yes, Joyce.
There's a couple things. One is I was listening to a webinar on Monday from a dear colleague. But anyway, it's reminding me because he was talking very much about Viktor Frankl, of course, and positive. It was like what we're talking about.
Right.
And of course, there's the whole other struggles of many psychological training, which says you diagnose, you see a diagnosis, and that's, you're not seeing with wisdom. You're not open to not knowing.
Right.
And the not knowing is so critical.
Right.
And what you're saying makes sense to everything, because then God has a chance.
Right.
If there's a nothing,
Right.
then
Very good.
he has a space to instead of saying, oh, well, I know this because this
Right.
research says this and this and this, but of course he's in charge of that too.
Right.
And it's all the nothing that allows us to discover
Right.
something. I
Right.
don't know if I'm saying
No,
that.
that very, very well said. I would say that that's the root of the word for scholar in Hebrew. The word for scholar in Hebrew is Talmid Chacham. That's how we've always related to our sages. Talmid Chacham. But Talmid Chacham really means the student of wisdom, because a truly wise man knows that he's always the student of wisdom, that he's never really reached wisdom. It's like Rabbi Steinsaltz will very often say, if you think you've arrived, you're lost. It's when you know that you have never arrived, that's when you find yourself. That's when you are living. And it's true. I'll share with you something personal, but on Friday I was called to Mark Wiseman. He has a friend in town whose father is ailing and is 93 years old, and he's unfortunately very, very depressed, as it happens sometimes, because sure, we've all seen this. people are ailing, they have their minds, they have their power of speech, they have the power of living, but their body is too frail to do anything. And he wants to die. Why should I live? Not even till tomorrow. I want to die today. It's no point. And all my friends died already. And said to go and speak to him. And so one of the things I said, I tried many buttons. Some worked, some did not. But one of the things I said is exactly what we're speaking about. And that's that great line. I don't know who said it, but maybe someone here does, and please tell me. But that great line that says that we know what we know what we don't know, but we don't know what we don't know. Right? Who said it? Anyone?
Very wise.
So, very wise person. Now, I would say this: if we had to measure how our lives work, I would say that the first two lines of we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know really occupy maybe 5 to 10% of our lives. Most of our lives are lived in the realm of we don't know what we don't know. We know what we know, but that's really my very limited perspective. That's all I can see. Okay, so now I know what I don't know. Then my perspective widens a little bit because I recognize that there are things that I don't know. Some people don't even recognize that. That's how dumb they are to use that word. But the people say, well, I know what I don't know. Fine, they widen the perspective. The things that I don't know, there's something happening that's beyond my reach. But then people say, I don't know what I don't know. Their perspective now widens completely because a lot of the world happens outside of your knowledge, outside of your consciousness. I would say 90% of your life, of the world, happens in that realm. Now I was telling this man, this 93-year-old man, look, we in life have to wake up in the morning and do what we have to do. You know why? Because we don't know what we don't know. You may smile at someone and you may have changed that life, saved that life. You do something good to your children, you may have made an impact for generations to come. God is expecting you to wake up in the morning and live a purposeful life, not because you know that it's good, not because you know that you don't know that it's good, but because you don't know that you don't know. And that in of itself is really how life is sewn together. And I think this is what this point is really, when I can recognize that it's not about me. I'm just a pawn here. I'm just an agent. I'm really just a channel, a conduit. Not about me. It's about all that happens beyond me, beyond my reach. I don't know what is happening. I just know that I have to show up. God is already taking care of everything else. And I would say, and I use that example with this old man, but one of the places in the Torah in which we see this so vividly, so I don't know if you pay attention to this, but I just paid attention to this because we read it, and it's like just astonishing if you meditate on it for a few moments. It's just so beautiful, because the Jewish people are suffering in Egypt. They've been enslaved now for 210 years, and yes, let's face it, they've given up hope. Given up hope. They are praying and praying, but God is not listening, or at least he seems not to be listening. While they are being enslaved, while they are suffering, while they are saying we've given up hope, what is happening on the other side of the world? God is appearing to Moses in the burning bush saying, I've heard they cry. Please go and redeem them. Now, if I'm a slave in Egypt, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know that God just appeared to Moses and that my prayers are in fact helping, because all I see is this. All I see is maybe this, but I don't know what I don't know. And therefore, so this point here in the Torah makes it very, very clear. God says, I'm the master of the universe. Don't you worry. I'm here. Just lose yourself in me. Lose yourself in that dono, me'ayin, in that nothingness. If you can open up your perspective and lose yourself in that nothingness, then you'll be able also to see the Moses coming to redeem you. Then you'll be able to experience true freedom and redemption. But you got to open yourself up. And the way to open yourself up is by recognizing that you don't know what you don't know. And you can only do that if your eye doesn't stand in the way, because your eye wants to know. Your eye wants to be in control. The losing your eye means, okay, I'm not in control. I don't know what I don't know, but I'm showing up to be God's conduit. And then salvation and redemption can come. But that's the idea really of the story of Egypt. And we see that in many other places in the Torah. But that's how you experience first and foremost. By the way, I remember that I was driving Rabbi Steinsaltz back from a lecture in New York. I think it was in 2010 or something like that. And he had to speak. It's a big event. and there was a rabbi who spoke before him, and they both had to speak about Joshua, the one who succeeded Moses, the big leader. He took the Jewish people into the promised land. But so the rabbi that spoke before him spoke beautifully with eloquent terms and so on and so forth. Then Rabbi Steinsaltz came and he spoke. He said what he said. And on my way back, I'm driving him to his hotel. I said to him, so what do you think of the event? He said to me, look, I think that the rabbi before me spoke much better than I did. He was an orator. But I think that our goal was different. He was speaking about Joshua. I wanted to have a seance with Joshua and bring Joshua to the people. And in a way, that's how you experience Joshua, by trying to have a seance with him. And this is what it's saying. How do you do that? You recognize it's not about me and the way I speak and my words and what vocabulary I use, and speaking about some distant figure in the past, but rather it's about connecting. It's about becoming one, and to become one with something that's not me, I have to lose my me, or at least move my me aside. And that's how you create the seance to Joshua, which is Rabbi Steinsaltz excelled at. You see that in his Talmud, in his commentaries. When you learn Rabbi Steinsaltz's Talmud, then all of a sudden you go back 2,000 years and you actually experience, Rav Ashi is like sitting right in front of you, studying, even though he was a figure of 2,000 years ago, or Ravina, all those other Talmudic rabbis. But that was his gift. Now, why? Because he had zero ego. Zero ego. It was never about him. It was always about being a conduit. That's why also he would very often say, he said this to me quite a few times, that he's not afraid of death, but he is afraid of life. What does that mean? He's afraid of living according to what God wants him to live. Now, he'll know that if he's afraid of living and he heeds that call, when death comes, he will have done everything in his power to be God's channel. And because he recognizes, as he would often say, that there's a boss who decides when you live and when you die. But when you live, you got to live. How do you live? By being that conduit. And then when death comes, you say, I did God's work in this world. I have nothing to be afraid of. That's really the idea here. That's how you experience Moses. That's how you experience the Red Sea. That's how you experience Mount Moriah. That's how you experience Abraham. That's how you experience Isaac and so on. Okay, we can continue, but otherwise, please, any comments? Yes.
Also, well, we don't know what we don't know, but I think that you always preach this, that you can be one, like to your point with God, that you create what you don't know.
Right.
Like you can be a co-creator with God. And like he was doing in that communication, like you can really create miracles,
right,
through God, right?
Right.
And be
right. That's right. But that's right. God wants, though, a partner that he can work with. And a partner that he can work with is a partner that recognizes the presence of God. If it's all about me, there's no... I was just with the chief rabbi of the Kotel yesterday. He came for a very short visit here. And he was telling me the story about, just reminded me of this, about a Canadian governmental official. I don't know how old he is today, must be very old, or maybe he already passed. Jeff Gripstein was his name. And I think something like that, Grifstein. And he would tell the story of when he turned 80, he decided to take upon himself a whole new career. In fact, he told the chief rabbi of the Kotel, please come to my 80th birthday. Not only will I be celebrating my birthday, but I'm celebrating a launch of a new career. So the chief rabbi says, at 80 years old, you're starting a whole new career. What's up? He says, you gotta know the backstory. Every decade of my life, from the age of 20, when I turned 30, I would fall into Great Depression. 40, depression. 50, depression. The age of 50, my wife says, you got to do something about it. We tried every psychiatrist under the sun. We tried everything. Maybe you should go see the Lubavitch Rebbe. A year that he can give good advice. He says, why do I need the advice of the Lubavitch? I know everything. I don't need anybody to help me. So, well, maybe you should try. Eventually he agreed. And he went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and they called his office, and they said, I need a meeting. And they tell him, sorry, the Rebbe doesn't see people anymore. This was in the 80s. The Rebbe didn't have private audiences with people because there were masses and masses of people who wanted to see him. But what he would do is every Sunday he would give dollars, as we know, and thousands of people would come by, and he would bless them for a few minutes, and that's how he would be able to address all these masses. So they told him, sorry, Rabbi can't meet you, but you can come on Sunday for dollars. He says, oh, if the rabbi doesn't want to meet me, I won't meet him. But eventually, again, his wife says, well, just go for dollars. You never know. Anyway, he went for dollars, and the Rebbe gave him $1, and he said to him, bracha v'atzlacha, blessing and success. And then the Rebbe says to him, Rebbe felt people, sensed people, do you want to say anything to me? It seems like you want to say something. And the man says, no, I don't want to say anything in public. So the Rebbe moved aside and he said, come, say it to me here. And he told the Rebbe his problem that every decade, and because he felt that he was getting older and older and he doesn't want to die. Everyone wants to be immortal. And he feels like he's getting really old. Even at the age of 50, he's getting really old. And the Rebbe says to him, how do you define age? He says, I don't know how to define age. He says, I'll define age for you, and I'll define what old means and what young means. If you are looking forward and asking yourself, what is there yet to do, then you're young. If you are looking backwards and you say to yourself, what have I done, then you're old. Now, in a way, back to your point, I think God is saying to all of us, I want people who can look for, not about me and my deeds and my achievements, not people that look backwards. I want people who can look forward and ask themselves, what can I do for God in this world? And that's really what makes us eternally young and makes us partners with God. And by the way, this man changed completely. And that's why at the age of 80, he decided to launch a new career because it was always what he can do, looking forward. And he decided to leave politics and to open a Chinese newspaper or Japanese or something like that. But that's it's never too late.
Did he live a longer life?
I don't know. I
Yeah,
didn't
that's
ask
a
him. I
good
could have.
story.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, Rabbi, how did the 93-year-old gentleman respond to your
I think he
feedback?
responded positively. I gave him some practical words of advice, and I'll only share them with you because you may know people in the same situation. I said to him, look, you have to do what you have to do. And part of what you have to do, and I thought that this would give him a new sense of life and of living. I said, look, I would, if I were you, you say you have 5 children and 9 grandchildren, I would record a lesson for them a day. If you don't have strength for all of them every day, so record a lesson, you don't have to share with them. After you die, that's when they'll hear it. Today, you go to son number 1 and you record a lesson. Tomorrow, son number 2, and then you go back. Then you go back. And as many lessons as they'll have, that's has many impacts they'll have on their own lives. So, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, what would you have said? Gila, you're the expert.
No, I'm not. We have a few therapists here in the room. What I would have done, I probably would have, very similar to what you did, but I would have, if he was able to talk and interact with his children and grandchildren, I would have said, you have such precious time now. It's so important. Think about what you want to say now in person, if possible. Maybe not realistic, maybe they don't all live in the same location,
Right.
but have some kind of human interaction with the children and grandchildren. I love your idea.
Yeah.
It's a project for him.
Yeah.
But also the interaction,
That interaction,
like every
right.
moment that you have
Very good.
with a child or a grandchild is precious.
Yeah.
And as long as you can talk and as long as you can think, wow.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Very good. Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. No, thank you. Okay, let's continue. Unless, again, any other questions, comments, disagreements, whatever. Okay. 136. In such prayer, the person. Please. Anyone. Yes. Please,
good.
Elizabeth, please go for it. In such
such
prayer.
The person praying and the words being prayed are one. There is no longer a dividing line between one's inner reality and one's outer expression, between communal ritual and the personal voice of the heart.
Mhm.
At times, such unity is achieved when people dance to a tune. The tune and dance blend into one. The melody dances and the dance sings. It is impossible to distinguish between them and to say which came first, which inspired the other.
Right. So that's that ultimate. You see, it's funny you read that. Elizabeth, yeah,
Totally.
yeah. You're the musician.
Because
Yeah.
that you don't know, Elizabeth is a concert pianist and a very talented musician. And
Right.
so you read the words of music.
Right, there you go. And it happens very often in music, right? You become so one. Amy knows this too. To become so one, I'm sure others too. But you become so one with the instrument that you don't know who's playing. It's not you playing anymore. It's the instrument playing by itself. There's a great expression in the Tanakh, the book of the prophets, that says that "Kenagen amen again." It's the melody of the person create the melody of the instrument itself, so that you like, say you're playing a violin and someone is watching you, you don't know where the music is coming from. Is it coming from the violin or is it coming from the human being?
Yeah.
Like they're one. They're so one with one another. And that's really the ultimate goal of our relationship with God, that we are so one. And you saw that in I saw that in Rabbi Steinsaltz, I saw that in Lubavitch Rebbe, I saw that in other Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu, saw that in many other rabbis and saints, that they are so one with God that you realize they're a piece of God. They're walking gods on earth. And that is also why, by the way, that the righteous are considered to be representatives of God's Shekhinah in this world, divine presence in this world, to the point that there is a whole section in the Code of Jewish Law that says how to respect people like that, how to deal with people like that, because they are really one with God. It's like God walking on earth. They're just becoming, maybe it's not a good analogy, maybe it is, but Abraham Joshua Heschel, when he marched with Martin Luther King Jr., he used the expression that he was praying with his feet. He's praying with his feet. But I would say it's the same thing. These righteous people are so one with God that they become God's feet on earth. It's God walking. They're just using their feet to bring God everywhere. And that's also the ultimate musician. That's the ultimate artist. That's the ultimate, right? You become one with God, one with that which is greater than you. I just want to add one more thing, and then we can also continue again. Welcome all comments and disagreements and so on. But just one more thing, and that is that it's interesting to note, because we were speaking about the elderly and so on. What's interesting is that, unfortunately, when we become older and older, that's when we realize that maybe we should give space for God. When we are younger and younger, that's when, children don't really think of God too much, or it's about me and my fun and so on and so forth. And I'm reminded of that. We just had Tu B'Shvat last week, but that midrash that is very riveting, very stirring in many ways, because it speaks about this passage from the prayer, from the High Holiday prayer. I don't know if we've mentioned it, but that compares our days to fleeting shadows. Yameinu ketzel over, that our day is like a fleeting shadow. And the Midrash immediately says, what does it mean, a fleeting shadow? Some people live like the fleeting shadow of a bird. Some people live like a shadow of a wall. Some people live like a fleeting shadow of a tree. What's the difference between the three? If you think about this, what type of shadow does a bird create? Almost zero shadow, because at 1 second it's here, another second it's there, the other second it's there. You don't see the shadow. And some people are like that. They don't create an impact in this world. They don't create God's shadow in this world. They're not channels. It's all about them. Then you have people that create shadows like the shadow of a wall. When does a wall create a shadow? When? Yeah, which times of the day? Either at the beginning of the day, right? When it's sunny, when the sun is shining on that side, on this side, on that side, or at the end of the day, not in the middle of the day. Some people are like that. The beginning of the day, when they're born, babies, They have this glow, this divine glow. They create shadows. They bring a lot of happiness. But then you start growing and it's all about me, me, me. And then you start a business of me, my time, my career, my this. And then towards the end of life, you say, shucks, I haven't left anything. What am I going to do? I haven't made an impact. My name is going to be forgotten like this. And you say, oh, maybe I should start thinking about others a little bit more. And that's when you create a shadow, but it's not towards your evening, towards the end of your life. That's because the I took the center stage in the middle. That wall. I is like a wall, like a stubborn wall. And then some people are like trees. You know when trees create shadows? All the time. All the time. Some people understand that it's not about them, it's about what they produce. It's about those fruits. It's about the shadow that they create for this world, being conduits to something that's greater than them. And I hope we don't get to the stage where we say, oh, it's too late, and we become walls.
Can I ask?
We
a
should be
question?
trees all the time. Yes.
You said like there's certain people that are special, right? And that
Mhm.
the rabbi, they came to this world and they're one with God.
Mm-hmm.
Can I be one with God? Like I sometimes think when I'm in meditation that I am one with God. Is that too egotistical or can a normal human?
No,
being-
absolutely. Absolutely. I think most people can be one with God, but during certain times, those people are one with God at all times. Now, our goal as human beings is to be one with God as many times as possible during, the vast majority of the day. Can we be one with God at all times? It's hard. I think those people are one with God even when they sleep. I was just reading about this, but the term for, it's just interesting because that's how righteous people function. The term for the chief of staffs in Israel is 4 years. You can be a chief of staff of the entire Israeli army just for 4 years. And not long ago, there was a change of chief of staffs. I don't know if you followed that in the news, but Aviv Kochavi went home and Herzi Levi became the new chief of staff. Aviv Kochavi was apparently given an option to extend his term into 5 years instead of 4 years. And he had to ask his wife. His wife said, no way, you're not doing this. Because the 5th year, she said to him, is in Beit Meshugaim. How do you
The crazy house.
the crazy house. You're gonna end up in a crazy house. He says, why'd she say that? Because the chief of in Israel, every single night, there is not a night in Israel in which there's no secret operation by some soldier, by some Shabak, by some units in the Israeli army. Now, who needs to sign on those operations? The chief of staff. Every night, he signs on an operation to send soldiers in danger. And every night, after he signs, he asks the generals to let him know if all of the soldiers came back alive. So he doesn't sleep for more than 2 or 3 hours every night. He's woken up every single night. And she said, I can't bear my husband having a 5th year with, again, sleepless nights every single night of the year. Now, why am I thinking of that? Because in a way, the righteous, their sleep is God's sleep. They don't sleep too. I know Rabbi Steinsaltz slept for 3 hours a night, something like that. They were like generals in God's army. I have something that's greater than me that I have to fulfill. So it's not just during the day in which we have to be one with God, but even at night we have to be one with God. Yes, so the body needs to sleep a little bit. So Rabbi Steinsaltz slept for 3 hours. The Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, there were nights he didn't sleep at all. At all. I mean, and that's also proven. He has alibis, as they call them, because he would have private audiences all night long with people. People would come and see him at 2 in the morning, at 5 in the morning, and then we'd go home, maybe take a shower and come back for prayer at 10. It was like unbelievable. But that's because he was a general. So to be a general, to be one with God in that level, I think very few people can attain that. But yeah. Okay. Any other comments, please? Otherwise, we can continue a few more lines, but please. Yes, Sadie.
To add that I
Yeah.
heard that the Rebbe also had as a balance for his dear Chaim Mushka wife, the sacrosanct time to have tea with her
Right.
was set, and that was his time with her
So she wasn't just forgotten in the whole.
Absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely. For him,
everybody wanting a piece of him.
he had
He also had that too.
every single day at 4 p.m.
Yeah.
he would have tea with his wife. If he was 2 minutes late, he would call ahead of time and say to his wife, "I'm 2 minutes late."
Yeah.
And from 4 to 4:20, they would sit on the porch and no one could bother them. And that was their sacred time. But the Rebbe would say, in addition to that, and that's also how you become one, the Rebbe knew how to be fully present in every moment. When he was with his wife, he was with his wife. When he was with you, he was with you. When he was davening, praying, he was praying. And so even though one may say, well, 4 to 4:20, he had 20 minutes only with his wife every day. Those 20 minutes, the quality of those 20 minutes was worth what other people do in 7 hours. So, yeah, but that's true.
Yeah, it was beautiful balance.
Yeah.
Rabbi, I really like the Adiba's question, because I think that one of the reasons we're all here is because we do want to get closer to God.
Mhm.
And one of the things, some of the things that we do are we pray, we meditate, we try to connect. We don't have to be tzaddikim to connect with God.
Absolutely. Right.
I think it's important that people don't become discouraged and
Right.
think I'm not good enough or
Right.
I'll never make it,
Right.
but
Good
to
point.
really struggle and know
Very
that
good
you're
point.
in the game.
But absolutely. God doesn't expect us also to be tzaddikim, to be righteous. Let's remember that. The people who are righteous are born like that. They were given special souls. Most of us are not given special souls, and that's because God doesn't want us to be special souls. God wants us to be as best as we can be. And that's why the book of the Tanya was written. Book of the Tanya speaks exactly of this idea. The book of the Tanya is called the book of Beinonim, which is not the book of the righteous, of tzaddikim. It's the book of the in-between people. Those are in between. And there in the Tanya, it says that if a person exercises self-control, for example, which is hard for a Beinonim, to have his godly soul overcome his animal soul, as he calls it. If he exercises self-control, one person may say, well, oh, you see, I have this animal soul. That means I'm not righteous. I'm discouraged. No, just the act of self-control, Tanya says as follows: create such a light that emanates from the person, pierces through the heavens, makes the angels tremble in front of this light, and reaches the throne of glory, and God opens all of the gates of heaven thanks to that light. So for the people who are not righteous, it's much easier to fall into this discouragement. But what should keep us really going and strong is the idea that we are given gifts that the righteous are not given. The righteous don't have to have self-control because they already are in control. So we can achieve things that even the righteous cannot achieve.